Kaylee Cuoco and Sam Claflin star in the MGM Plus original series, Vanished. When the man Alice loves disappears on a train to the south of France, every romantic memory becomes evidence. Every intimate detail, a potential threat. She thought she knew everything about him, but she may not even know his real name. 4-part thriller Vanished premieres February 1st on MGM Plus. Finding the truth is a dangerous affair.
It takes us to the center north of the United States, a heavily rural and heavily wooded part of the country, largely taken over by the Manistee National Forest. A lot of places to disappear and make things disappear around these parts. And I said it in the intro a couple of seconds ago, my invisible watch tells me, and I'll say it again. In northern Michigan lies Wexford County. That's all you really need to know about it, because that's all there is to say about it. Oh, and it's named after Wexford, Ireland. Great, but what wasn't was what happened on November 3rd, 2025. That was when 22-year-old Rebecca Park was last seen. Rebecca K. Park, Becca, as she went by, was 38 weeks pregnant. A native Michigonian? Sure, why not? She was born in 2003 to Courtney Fox, these days Courtney Bartholomew, and when she was 1 year old, Becca, her sister Kimberly, and their brother were actually sent to live with a foster family, the Parks, hence the different surname, in Lake City. Stephanie Park, the foster mom, the woman who had actually raised Becca and her siblings, she would say she spent almost 18 years trying to hide Becca from her biological family, Courtney and her husband, Bradley Bartholomew. As you'll see, she had good-ass reason to. Though I think posting TikToks like this and her posting those fake Tommy Shelby quotes, that's already enough of a reason. They didn't have much contact growing up, and Stephanie Park would say she knew Becca's parents were real no-gooders. Becca would be better off living a life without these blood relatives. However, it seems that over the years, she did once again get to know her non-foster fam, and she had a relationship with her mom, Courtney, the talking ashtray. Becca would, when she was like 18 or 19, get into a relationship with a man named Richard Fowler, Richie. Now himself, quite a bit older than Becca, and when I say like quite a bit older, I mean like twice her age. In fact, older than Courtney, Becca's mom. Bit weird. You know what else is like a bit weird? It's the fact that all the players in this story, they all have these disturbing criminal records, especially sex crimes. It's not very chill if you ask me. Bradley Bartholomew, Becca's stepdad, criminal record going back to the year 2000. Convictions include criminal sexual conduct involving a victim, 13 to 15, possession of child sexual abuse material, and he failed to register as a sex offender time and time again. Must have just kept slipping his mind, huh? He has other convictions too, parole violations, receiving stolen goods. I mean, I guess it must get pretty boring up in northern Michigan, but that's, the people we're dealing with in this story. Pretty disturbing crimes, sort of all around, and it will get so much worse. So look forward to that. Now, Richie Fowler, Becca's boyfriend, who's twice her age, actually her fiance, Richie and Becca, they lived together on a trailer on Richie's dad's rural-ass land. Now, Becca and Richie, around the time we're talking, November 2025, they were planning on getting married. They were trying to save up money for the wedding, but also so they could get their own place. Whoa, he's got a wolf as his profile photo. Jeez, it's pretty badass. Now, Richie, Becca's boyfriend, fiance, he was mad for the kids, and not in a good way. In 2003, and then in 2015, so 12 years we're talking, he was convicted two times, of sexual conduct with an underage person. In 2005, sexual conduct involving an incapacitated victim, Roofie Richie, I'll call him, remind me. And then again in 2015, he was convicted of accosting a child for immoral purposes. That's the old "I got candy in my van" maneuver, and also sexual assault. So Becca's fiance and her stepdad, both rapist pedophiles? Now, it might shock you to know that Richie Fowler was also involved in drugs too. In fact, shortly before Becca vanished, their trailer was raided by police and the loving couple were living back in Richie's dad's home. Now, heavily pregnant Becca, come November 2025, aged 22, she already had 2 kids by another man And both of those kids were in fact being raised by her foster mom, Stephanie Park. It seems that the first two were fathered by people unknown, but her bun in the oven, her unborn child, that was Richie's kid. Now, Becca was described as a person who was always happy, even though she did have her own troubles and some mental illnesses. She was always one to show up with a smile. She was no Debbie Downer. A very loving person. And so let's get into what we know so far about what happened with this very colorful cast of characters. Oh, I forgot to mention Courtney Bartholomew. She only has one leg. I mean, I thought that was interesting. On November 1st, 2025, the family had dinner together. Present was Becca, her younger sister by 1 year, Kimberly, Courtney, and Courtney's son Bentley, who was a son from another relationship. The following day, November 2nd, 2025, Becca believed she was going into labor. In fact, she had a friend bring her to the hospital in Cadillac, but it was a false alarm. Now, her due date was November 18th. So, getting pretty close, only about 2 weeks away, so you can imagine why she was thinking, uh-oh, let's rock. So she was sent home from Cadillac Hospital, false alarm. But then the very following day, November 3rd, Becca, she had the same situation. She believed she was going into labor once again, and this time, ain't no false ring-a-ding. This was at her mom, Courtney's, home. Courtney would say that Rebecca had come over to her home, which wasn't far from where she lived, because she needed Tide Pods. Then she told her mom a friend was going to pick her up. Last Courtney said she saw was Becca getting into a dark-colored sedan, and then they drove off. She did not see who was in the car. Now, the state Becca was in, it was presumed that maybe they were taking her to the hospital, but it was weird. As in, somebody was going to drive her to the hospital because she believed she was going into labor, with her fiancé not going with her, her family not going with her, and nobody then has heard from Becca since. She completely vanished from there. The very next morning, Tuesday, November 4th, 2025, Becca Park was reported missing to the Wexford County Sheriff's Office, and the search was on.
Are desperate for answers.
Rebecca was seen Monday night getting into a dark-colored vehicle outside a home on South 21.5 Road in Boone Township.
Every time my phone goes off, I look at it. Every time a car goes by my house, I look out the window thinking it's going to be her.
Richard Failer says he's been a mess since Becca disappeared. He says she was last seen getting into the passenger seat of a dark-colored vehicle at her biological mother's house on South 21.5 Road in Boone Township.
Becca told her, said, hold on, I got somebody pick me up. This is just something I got to do. I'm sorry. A black sedan car pulled up. Becca got out of the car, out of her mom's car, and got in the black sedan, and nobody's heard from her since.
Failer says she never told anyone who was picking her up and has no idea who she left with. He says it's just not like her. They're inseparable.
Me and her's been together for a little over 2 years. And even when she's not around me, she's always in contact with me.
Failer says he's worried for Becca and their unborn son.
She had gone to the hospital. In fact, nobody had any sort of clue where she had gone. Later on that day, when she was reported missing, her cell phone was allegedly found on a dirt road not far from her mom's home. Now, it was her sister Kimberly who allegedly found that phone. She said that's where she found it, and she gave it to the police. Now, people began to question, why did she run? Did she leave willingly? It would be sort of out of character for a heavily pregnant woman to suddenly just up and vanish into thin air, leaving her phone behind her so nobody could track her. However, it was also alleged that she had recently received an inheritance, a family inheritance of about $2,000, which would be enough to, for her to run away, maybe go to Tennessee. That was one of the places people speculated she had gone to, if that was her intention. But most people believed that wasn't her intention.
Deputies say they believe Park received about $2,000 cash from family inheritance the day she vanished. Money that can make it easier for her to avoid electronic tracking. Her friends, though, say she wasn't planning to leave. Friends who have known Rebecca for years are now searching on their own. focusing on back roads and wooded areas near where she was last seen Monday. Deputies say Rebecca is not in any legal trouble. They just need to confirm she and her baby are safe.
Searchers went out. Canines, drones, volunteers, you name it, you got it. All went out into those northern Michigan woods and fields. And pretty soon, as more information about the relations of Becca came out, people began to point fingers. No one could find Becca. The last people to allegedly see and contact her were her mom, stepdad, and fiance, all of whom no good. The story of her disappearance was all their story, which didn't make sense for this heavily pregnant woman yet again to suddenly say, oh, hey, I'm about to go into labor, but I don't want any of you guys to come with me. There's somebody out there, I'm not going to tell you who. Some out there, invisible car. This is fake story, mcfakestory.com. Interesting story that makes no sense told by interesting people. And by interesting, I mean shitty. They're not serious people. Their entire story smells like that.
More details tonight as the search continues in Wexford County for 22-year-old Rebecca K. Park, who was just days away from giving birth. Deputies tell us she was last seen a week ago, getting into a dark-colored vehicle outside a relative's home in Boone Township. She hasn't been seen or heard from since. Up North Live's Tony Lundy spoke to two of her loved ones, has the latest.
Just keep telling myself every minute that she's gonna be found. Her and the little man are gonna be safe, okay. Having problems sleeping because for the last 2 years, every night, she's the one I was laying in bed next to.
Fowler says he knew something was wrong right away.
I tried to call her a few times because I didn't get no messages, call from her, nothing. And it's just not like her because we're together 99% of the time. When we're not, you can ask anybody. We're always on our phones messaging each other, letting us know, each other know what's going on.
I know that Rebecca don't go nowhere by herself. I know that me and Rebecca and Paige have had a thing in mind for at least 6 years now, that if something was to go wrong, we have Rebecca's okay to call the cops and have them come look for her.
Folk from all over who had come to these woods to help search soon began demanding answers. And when you have a young, heavily pregnant woman suddenly vanishing and her family seeming like all liars, that's gonna get people pretty frickin' riled up, all right. Then it came out that Richie Fowler, Becca's fiance, he had previously been in a relationship with Courtney, the missing woman's mom. So now things are looking pretty damn interesting when the missing woman's fiance was in a relationship with Pegleg, her mom, who also has a bad taste in men. I mean, Courtney has now been in a relationship with at least 2 convicted rapist pedophiles. Not sure what that says about her. So were they in cahoots, Courtney and Richie? Did they murder Becca together so they could, be together? I mean, Richie and Courtney were in a, closer age than Richie was with her daughter. And it's always the last person to see the victim. 99% of the time, it's 100% of the time. And they were the last people to see Becca before she vanished. And very soon, very publicly, the family began to, there you go, throw each other under the bus. They began to, in full public view, point fingers at each other.
Kimberly is implicating me of hitting my daughter and hiding the body.
We know that.
She's implicating my husband of murder.
We want to know who Rebecca is.
Before my daughter went missing, Kimberly asked about the trails behind my house. The black car? It was Kimberly in the car.
How do you know that? How do you know it was her in the car? It's a pregnant woman that needs to be found. It's a baby that needs a warm blanket.
But give me a second. We've already talked to her. We've talked to her. She's fine.
She put her on a bus and sent her to Tennessee. That is all I know. But she asked about the trail.
That her sister Kimberly was involved in the disappearance, and now people are thinking murder.
Courtney told me if I say absolutely anything, me and my daughter are both going down for it.
Was that in a text or a phone call?
So what's going to stop her now?
Show us the text, Kimberly.
She said it to my face.
That it was Courtney and Richie cheating behind Becca's back, and that Bradley, Courtney's husband, was involved in some capacity. That perhaps all four of them, Courtney, Bradley, Richie, and Kimberly, had killed Becca together. Meanwhile, the search continued for this young, missing, heavily pregnant woman. And from all the conflicting stories the family were now telling, none of this was going to have a happy ending. It was on November 25th, 3 weeks since Becca left in a mysterious dark-coloured sedan, wink wink, that a discovery was made.
We came out, we went down, we drove down as far as we thought, we got out, we looked around. Then this white truck came up to us again, an older gentleman and a 20-year-old, some young boy came up and said that they needed help and wanted to show me a video.
The body of 22-year-old Rebecca Park was discovered in the Manistee National Forest by 2 volunteers. She was not far from where she lived or where her family lived, almost in her own mom's backyard. Which is what her own mom actually said, according to TikToker Northern Nicholas.
It's right here behind my house, I'm sure.
Oh, you're saying she's behind the house?
No.
It looked like Becca had been here almost the entire time since she disappeared. She had been stabbed to death. She had many stab wounds to the neck and the stomach. And the baby was missing from her body. It appeared to have been cut out of her. The very night she was found, Richie was arrested. The following morning, her sister Kimberly was arrested. Now, Richie was arrested on drugs charges, nothing in relation to the homicide of his fiancée. Kimberly, though, she was arrested for tampering with evidence and lying to a police officer.
21-year-old Kimberly Park now being held on a $750,000 bond, with the judge today calling her a flight risk.
Richard Fowler, Rebecca's fiance, is being held on a $1 million bond and being called a threat to the community.
At what point did you and Brad, this is after Rebecca went missing, looked at each other and said, I think Kimmy is involved in this? Did you kind of know right away, like as soon as she went missing, or did it take a little bit?
When she told us Saturday that she was in the car and she put her on the bus, that's when we were like, that doesn't seem right. Something's not right.
But the baby is not there, so she either took the baby and done something like the baby's still alive, which we hope, or she tried to save the baby and was unable to. And then the baby is in a separate place.
I don't know what she was thinking.
Kimmy allegedly done this, or he allegedly done this. One helped the other, or were they a team? Did they have a close relationship, Kimmy and Rich?
They were having an affair.
The graphic details laid out by the prosecuting attorney describing what investigators say led to the death of Rebecca Park and her baby. The accused, Rebecca's biological mom, Courtney Bartholomew, and stepdad, Brad Bartholomew.
They brought Rebecca Park to their home. They forced her into a vehicle and took her into the woods, where they stabbed her, forced her to lie on the ground while they cut her baby out of her, ultimately causing her death and the death of the baby.
And then, almost a week later, both Courtney and Bradley were arrested and charged with 8 felonies, most namely torture, conspiracy, and murder. It seems a little bit likely, now I'm just putting this out there, and this is mad, but maybe all of them were involved in the very suspicious murder of Becca Park. And the hell of it is, Rebecca Park's unborn child, who had been cut from her stomach, remains missing. How and why each of them were arrested is much like how they were before they were arrested. Pointing the finger at everybody was fingering each other, and not in a good way. Kimberly told police that Becca had been at her mom's house, and Becca and Courtney never had a good relationship. It was always described as rocky, and for one reason or another, snapped. They got into this huge physical altercation. Courtney and Bradley began hitting the heavily pregnant woman, so much so that Becca got a seizure, and they were Well, the words the police affidavit uses is unable to revive her. So, what are you gonna do? You call your buddy who comes along and says, oh, I'm gonna dump her in a swamp. That was what Kimberly said happened to her sister. Now, we know that to be untrue because, Becca wasn't found in a swamp. Oh, and by the way, another thing came out. Kimberly was also in a relationship with Richie, if you can believe that. I know, can you believe that? So this guy was banging the one-legged mom and her 2 daughters, all at the same time. And all the while looking like Abe Lincoln's lobotomized grandson. F this story. He's a literal pedo rapist. Like, everybody in this story needs their head bounced off a wall because it could only be an improvement. After Becca's body was actually found, Kimberly would say that Richie told her he had taken care of it, and that Richie told Kimberly to point the finger at her mom and her stepdad, Courtney and Bradley. So after the body was discovered, Kimberly was now saying that Richie had actually murdered Becca. Now, police did arrest Richie for open murder, but found no evidence backing it up, so that charge didn't stick, but they still had him on the drugs charges. So that's why Kimberly was arrested for lying to the police. She was basically pointing the finger at whoever she was told to, and none of her stories checked out. Honestly, I'm starting to get a little worried that stupid is contagious. Richie was arrested on very serious drugs charges combined with his past history, but not for any reason related to his fiance's murder. Not yet, anyway. However, for Courtney and Bradley, they were actually charged with the murder of Becca. It seems that Kimberly and Richie, they were just like pointing the finger at each other, pointing the finger away. I think everybody in the story is on meth. That would actually explain that. Mystery solved. Now, Courtney and Bradley, they, can I shock you, pointed the finger at Kimberly initially because they said that Kimberly wanted Richie for herself, so she killed Becca. Then they pointed the finger at Richie. Then they pointed the finger at each other. A lot of fingers in this story. However, reading through all the affidavits, and you can find them, folks, they make for interesting reading. The true story seems to be that Courtney wanted the baby, Becca, her daughter's baby, her grandchild. She wanted that for herself. Bradley would tell police in custody that Courtney was jealous of her daughter for having a child, that she wanted the baby for herself. Maybe because her own children had been taken away when they were like a year old and placed in foster care because, oh yeah, almost forgot. Courtney is a horrible person. Who's also a shitty mother. Courtney even texted the now deceased Becca, don't have the baby in a hospital because she wanted it. Basically what it boils down to is Courtney wanted her daughter's baby and she wanted Richie. So Becca had to go. Allegedly, Brad and Courtney had even been Googling how to cut the baby out of Becca's body for 2 months before this all happened. This was planned. They just wanted to wait till the last moment so the baby would be grown. But they needed to make sure she didn't give birth in the hospital. And about a week before the murder of Becca, Courtney began texting her sister, who lived away, telling her that she had just given birth to a son and was asking for items for her new baby. On November 3rd, 2025, Becca needed Tide Pods, so Bradley and Courtney said, come on over, we got some, get in the truck. They didn't drive her to the house though, they drove to the woods. Then they began stabbing. Courtney began stabbing her own daughter with a kitchen knife. She cut the baby out of her daughter Becca while she was still alive and then just left her there to die. But it seems like the baby didn't survive the stabbing. After keeping it in their house for a couple of days, they then placed it in a tote bag near a logging site. That's absolutely horrific what they did to Becca. And the thing was, like, who actually did the stabbing? I mean, Bradley would say Courtney stabbed Rebecca Park. Courtney would say Bradley stabbed Rebecca Park. They were saying the other one had actually done it, but this was finally the one time when their stories were sort of matching. And it's probably the worst story of all.
Courtney Ann Bradley Bartholomew, the biological mom and stepfather accused in the torture and murder of Rebecca Park and her infant, appearing in court today.
Either way, Becca was murdered by her mom and stepdad for the horrifying reason of taking her baby. The baby, also of a man who's getting it on with all the women in the family. Yikes. In the days after, as the search for Becca began, the family were communicating how to keep their story straight. And even now, we don't have the full scale. I mean, all of them are liars. All of them are methods. And all of them participated in one way or another, either in the murder directly or in the cover-up of the murder of this young woman. And then when it started to come out, and it looked like the police were going to crack this case, they all immediately began throwing each other under the bus. They should all be thrown under the bus. This story is still moving through the court system as this comes out. The next hearing will be January 30th, 2026, so set your watches. An incredibly disturbing story with a lot of horrifying allegations. And I mean, you'd think this can't get much worse than what I've already just gone through, can it? Oh yes, it can. And I'm sure it will. I'm sorry, guys. This is just a horrible story all around. I've no doubt the horrifying case of the murder of Rebecca Park for her baby, who also died, will only get more and more disturbing and gruesome and sinister the more that the scale comes out. Sinead.